was Hailey King?
Hailey was the youngest of four. She was our bright light. Hailey was 18 years old when she lost her life, but she was always smiling, always happy. She never stopped laughing. She found humor in everything. She was born early. She was a preemie at 31 and a half weeks, and she had significant hearing loss. When she left that day, it was about 1 o'clock. She told me she'd be home in time for dinner. I called her and I said, all right, dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. And she said, all right, I'm on my way. And I said, all right. And about 20 minutes later, I started hearing sirens. And I just had a really bad feeling. And I told my husband, I don't know what's going on, but I just have a bad feeling. Will you go check and make sure that something hasn't happened to Hailey? And he said, nothing's happened to her. You just talked to her. She's fine. I was really uneasy. She didn't make it home for dinner like she said. I kept trying to call her. She wasn't answering. And I thought, okay, well, you know, she's 18. She probably just lost track of time. I decided to try to lay down and go to sleep. And about 10 minutes later, my husband came into the door and he said, there was some police officers at the door that needed to talk to me about Hailey. And I knew then, and I walked downstairs. There were 2 uniform officers and 2 plainclothes officers standing there. And the first thing I said to them was, is she dead or alive? And they said, how do you know we're here about anything? And I said, why else would you be here? And they said, well, we don't even know if it's her. We need to ask you some questions. And I said, all right. And they said, does she have any scars on her body or anything identifiable? And I was like, well, no, not that I can really think of. And they said, well, does she have any names tattooed on her? And I said, she does, right above her heart. She has her daughter's name, and it says Brooklyn. And that's when they said, you need to come with us to the hospital. There's been an accident, and she was found in the road, and you need to get there now. And my whole world just dropped then. We went to the hospital and they took us straight up to ICU. And they, out of nowhere, doctors and nurses came and made a circle around us out in the waiting area and started telling us that she had a brainstem hemorrhage, an intracranial, an outer cranial hemorrhage. Her spleen had burst, her liver was lacerated. She couldn't maintain her own blood. That she had already coded 3 times. They'd already replaced every drop of blood in her body twice. And it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when her heart stops again. What did I want to do? And I said, is she awake? And they said, she'll never regain consciousness. If she were to live, which she is not going to be able to, that she would have been a vegetable in the bed for the rest of her life. Because of this brain stem hit. And at the time, so they want to know if they should continue life support measures, and I was like, just let me see my child. I finally they took me back to the room, and she was sitting up at kind of an angle, and her eyes were wide open, but she was like staring off into space. And I knew right when I looked at her that she was gone. So I sat down with her and talked to her and told her how much I love her. Told her I was never going to stop fighting for justice for her. I was going to find out who did this. And I was going to fight for her daughter to bring her home and let her know who her mother was and how much she loved her. And then her heart stopped. We didn't know everything right then. All we knew is that there had been an accident, is what we were told. We were told after Hailey had passed. Then when I went out of the room and out of the intensive care room, I asked them, I want to know what happened. I want to know who did this. And they said they weren't really sure at that point, but it appeared that she had been on the back of a scooter and somebody had ran them over or hit them. It wasn't, and for a few days later that we got all of the information that she was a passenger on the back of the scooter. She was only a block and a half from home when a man named Sergio Rodriguez was going 71 and a 35. The kids were not stopped at a stop sign or anything. They were just driving down the street, and he plowed into them. Hailey flew up on the hood of the truck, and the scooter and David, her friend, went up underneath the truck. When Hailey was on the hood to get her off, he didn't slow down. He didn't stop. He didn't try to help her. He very quickly flung the truck over into the next lane, and Hailey went off of the hood head first into the street, and he left her there. David was trapped up underneath the truck for over a mile. When sparks started happening, he pulled into an apartment complex, and when he did, David's torso, with his legs detached, was left in the driveway screaming for his life. He was still conscious. And then Sergio disappeared for 3 days. David did lose both of his legs. He was a double amputee at 20 years old. They didn't think he was going to make it. And when the police finally got a hold of Sergio that night, or that afternoon, they called me and said, "We wanted to let you know that we have located him. He is in custody." And that was actually the day the elections were coming through for President Trump. They had the man that killed my daughter's face on this side of the TV and all the numbers coming in on the bottom for the elections. But 45 minutes later, we got a call again, and it was the police department, and they wanted to inform me before the press found out that he had been released on bond. I could not believe what I was hearing. We didn't know his status at the time. We had no idea. It wasn't until many months later that we found out that he was illegal. But even so, you have one dead 18-year-old and one 20-year-old that's not expected to make it. And this man is only in jail for 40 minutes. I don't care what his status was. But it makes it even worse that he was illegal. We got very lucky that he was only released on an ankle monitor and not just released out into the streets to take off again. I told Hailey that night when her heart was stopping that I was going to fight for her and for justice for her and to make sure this didn't happen to anybody else. But it's been a hard, long road. They originally didn't want to really put any charges on him. They were going to put leaving the scene of an accident. It was about 8 or 9 months into all of this that we found out his status of being illegal. And I went to the prosecuting attorney and I said, "We understand accidents happen every day. But when you know that you have hit somebody and you have a young girl's body on the hood of your truck, and you don't pull over, you don't stop, you don't call for any kind of help for these kids, you decided at that point to commit murder. And I'm sorry, but when you didn't slow down and stop at 71 miles an hour and she goes headfirst into the street and receives even more brain injuries, he made that conscious choice to swerve that car and knock her off. That was murder." He agreed, and we did get a second-degree murder charge eventually after I went to the press, went to the prosecutor. We went to the press over everything with this case because they kept trying to downplay everything. Like I said, it was, I think, 9 months into it, we got that second-degree murder, and they were going after 58 years. And right before the trial was due to begin, that district attorney had retired, and a new one came in and did a plea deal for 17 years. His final charges ended up being manslaughter with 10 years on my daughter's death, 5 years for battery on David, who had lost his legs, and then 2 years for leaving the scene. And David subsequently died 2 years later due to his injuries, the loss of his legs. He had a blood clot that went to his heart and it killed him. We fought, then I called and I was trying to get them to then redo his charges back to a second-degree murder charge also. And they refused. When I was called about the 17-year sentence, we weren't asked how we felt about it or anything. They said, this is what we're doing. We don't get a choice in it. No, you don't have a choice in it. The prosecutor decides if he has enough evidence, and he feels that this is not a very strong case, and it was all on video. The whole thing was on video. Then we found out they allowed him to get married right before the sentencing to a U.S. citizen and have a child, even though he had committed these crimes and everything else here. So, they had mentioned in court that he would be deported after his sentence, and my only thought was, well, wait a minute, you let him get married now. Is he going to be deported? What is going to happen now that he was allowed to marry a U.S. citizen? And nobody could tell me. Nobody could give me an answer. I asked the prosecuting attorney's office, I said, well, why did you guys release him on bond when he was here illegally and was already committing a crime before this? And I was told that, well, if we would have informed ICE that he was here and he was illegal, that they would have just picked him up and taken him down to Texas and sent him back, and he would have never had to deal with the death of your daughter and all of this. And I was, it's so confusing to be there and say, okay, do I want him to be deported right now, or do I want him to spend time either way and get him out of so it was kind of putting us in a rock and a hard place on which was better to do. We had no idea, a choice like that. What kind of decision do you make? And then I just, I said, what, we'll take a chance that they will still deport him, but let him rot for a while. He needs to sit in prison for what he's done. I found out afterwards that I was lied to first by the city. The town that we were in, Fayetteville, Arkansas, is an ICE holding facility. That was not true about them sending him down to Texas. Why they covered it up, I don't know. We were treated like we were the criminals when we'd go into court. I was threatened that if I did it, because of all the publicity going on around the case, that I may not be able to be in the courtroom for the hearing. We really honestly felt like we were the criminals. He was protected every step of the way. Everything that we were told was going to happen in court didn't. After he did make it to prison, a year and a half into this, I get a notification that he's going up for parole. I could not believe it. Parole? He's only done a year and a half of the 17-year sentence. We have to relive this right now every 2 years. As soon as the pain dulls a little bit, you have to go back through the whole thing, preparing to try to keep him behind bars again.
What changes or policies would you like to see implemented to prevent any more of these tragedies from happening?
When an American citizen goes to jail, they come up for parole release. They're monitored. There are certain things that they have to do, classes and check in with the parole officer, and they keep an eye on them. When they are illegal and they're going to be deported and they're released on a early parole release, they're not monitored. They don't have to report to somebody and follow all the laws, and I'd like to see that change. I don't believe that there should be an early parole release for somebody who's not going to be on parole. And that's something I would like to see changed immediately. Families shouldn't have to keep reliving this every 2 years. And there shouldn't ever be a chance that after killing somebody, you can come back into our country legally. Through all of this, we did not just lose Hailey, we lost her daughter. She was 2 years old at the time. We were told that we were the next of kin. She would be placed with us, not to worry. And we were waiting for a court date when I had looked up the family that I knew that she was with. And I was so excited just to see a picture of her. After sitting there, oh, she's gotten so big. And I blew up the picture and the sign said, "It's adoption day. I'm finally Brooklyn Manning." I felt like I had been kicked in the gut all over again. It was just like sitting there and watching Hailey die that night You know, everything started flashing back, and me sitting there making promises to Hailey to raise her daughter to be happy and healthy and know who she was and how much she loved her. It was almost as bad. I felt like I betrayed Hailey. I betrayed Brooklyn. I called our attorney. Couldn't get a hold of him. It was in the evening. I had to wait, and it was a Friday when I found it, to Monday, and all he could tell us was, I don't know what happened. We're going to file a motion to reconsider all of this. He said, but honestly, I think you just got screwed. It was his words. Hailey's life is, like I said in the beginning of this, she was our shining star. Hailey went out of her way to make sure that even her friends in school that were in foster care or homeless had what they needed, their basics. She would take her own clothing and make anything she had, and she would take it down to the homeless and give it to them. Every year, and now in honor of Hailey on her birthday, we take down and feed the homeless here in Colorado Springs and pass out jackets and basic toiletries in memory of Hailey. Hailey would have gone far in this world. There was so much that she wanted to do. Hailey spoke like a deaf person because she was. I don't think I had ever been happy until later after she died that I thought at least she didn't hear anything coming. My daughter, the only thing she did wrong that day was being on the back of a scooter, coming home for dinner. She didn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve for her daughter to not know who she is and how much she loved her. She doesn't deserve any of it, and she deserves to have the justice I promised to her. As she was dying, and I'll never stop fighting, I'm going to do everything I can to keep my promise to her.